a night that changed a nation. On the evening of April 6, 2018, a bus carrying the Humboldt Broncos junior hockey team was traveling through rural Saskatchewan. It was a routine road trip, another playoff game, another small-town hockey night in Canada. By the time the sun set, 16 people would be dead, 13 more would be seriously injured, and an entire country would be left asking how something so ordinary could turn so catastrophic. This is not just the story of a collision at a rural intersection. It is the story of youth, responsibility, infrastructure failure, human error, systemic gaps, grief, accountability, and national trauma. For Canada, a country where hockey is more than a sport, this tragedy cut deeper than statistics ever could. Tonight, we reconstruct what happened, why it happened, and what followed, from the moments before impact to the courtrooms, hospitals, memorials, and policy changes that came after. This is the full story of the Humboldt Broncos bus crash. The team, the town, and the journey. Humboldt, Saskatchewan, is a town of roughly 6,000 people. Like many prairie communities, hockey is woven into everyday life, from frozen outdoor rinks to packed local arenas on winter nights. The Humboldt Broncos were not a professional team. They were part of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, made up of young men aged mostly between 16 and 21, many chasing dreams of scholarships, minor leagues, or simply playing the game they loved. On April 6, 2018, the Broncos were en route to Nipawin, about 200 kilometers northeast, for Game 5 of a playoff series against the Nipawin Hawks. The team bus left Humboldt that afternoon. Players listened to music. Some slept. Others texted family and friends. Among them were players, coaches, support staff, and the bus driver, an experienced professional familiar with rural routes. Nothing about the trip felt unusual. They had traveled this road before. The collision occurred at the intersection of Highway 35 and Highway 335 near the community of Armley, Saskatchewan. This intersection was controlled by stop signs on Highway 335, no stop for traffic on Highway 35. The Broncos bus was traveling northbound on Highway 35, the through highway. Approaching from the west on Highway 335 was a semi-trailer truck, loaded and traveling east. Visibility was not perfect, but it was clear daylight. Road conditions were dry. There was no weather emergency. The critical factor would not be weather. It would be human error. At approximately 5 p.m., the semi-truck entered the intersection. The truck failed to stop. The bus had no time to avoid impact. The semi struck the bus at highway speed, directly along the right side, where players were seated. The force of the collision sheared the bus apart, scattered debris across the highway, threw passengers violently inside the cabin. The bus was destroyed. Emergency responders later described the scene as one of the worst they had ever encountered. Many victims died instantly. Others were critically injured. Several were trapped. The sound of metal, glass, and human devastation echoed across an otherwise quiet prairie evening. Emergency calls flooded dispatch centers. Local firefighters, paramedics, RCMP officers, air ambulances, and volunteers rushed to the scene. They arrived to wreckage spread across both highways, survivors screaming for help, silence where life had already ended. Hospitals across Saskatchewan activated mass casualty protocols. Victims were transported to Nipawin, Melfort, Saskatoon. Air ambulances flew continuously. Doctors, nurses, and trauma specialists worked through the night. Families waited, some without information, for hours. Phones rang unanswered. Text messages went undelivered. By nightfall, the numbers became official. 16 people were dead. 10 players, 6 team staff members, including the head coach. 13 others were injured, many critically. The youngest victim was 16 years old. The oldest was 29. Entire families were shattered in minutes. Humboldt, and soon all of Canada, entered collective mourning. A nation grieves. Within hours, news spread nationwide. Hockey arenas dimmed their lights. Sticks were placed outside front doors. Jerseys were hung from bridges. The phrase Humboldt Strong appeared everywhere. Handwritten signs, social media, NHL broadcasts. A nationwide vigil was held. Prime ministers, premiers, NHL stars, and citizens alike attended memorials. The Broncos' home arena became a sea of flowers, scarves, letters, and candles. The grief was not performative. It was raw. For many Canadians, this tragedy felt personal, because it could have been any small-town team, any rural road, any bus. Attention turned to one question: how did this happen?
The RCMP investigation concluded the semi-truck driver failed to stop at the stop sign. The bus driver had no fault. Road conditions were not a factor. Vehicle mechanical failure was not a factor.
The cause was clear, but the implications were not. The truck driver was Jaskirat Singh Sidhu, a 29-year-old immigrant from India. He was relatively new to driving in Canada. He had a clean record, but limited experience. Sidhu was charged with 16 counts of dangerous driving causing death, 13 counts of dangerous driving causing bodily harm.
I plead guilty. I am deeply remorseful. I will live with the consequences forever.
In 2019, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. The sentence sparked national debate. Was it too lenient? Was it appropriate for negligence rather than intent? Should systemic issues be considered? There were no easy answers. Beyond the driver, investigators and policymakers examined commercial driver training standards, licensing requirements, transportation oversight, and rural intersection safety.
Changes followed: mandatory training standards for truck drivers, enhanced safety requirements, and calls for improved signage and intersection design.
But critics argued reforms came after tragedy, not before. Survivors faced physical rehabilitation, brain injuries, PTSD, and survivor's guilt. Some would never play hockey again. Families continued to grieve, privately, long after public attention faded. The Broncos organization eventually returned to the ice. Their first game back was not about winning. It was about remembering. The Humboldt Broncos bus crash was not just an accident. It was a moment that forced Canada to confront the cost of complacency, the fragility of youth, the responsibility carried by those behind the wheel, the human consequences of systemic gaps. 16 lives ended on a rural highway. They are not statistics. They are names, faces, families, dreams that never reached their finish line. And as long as their story is told, carefully, accurately, and with respect, they are not forgotten. This is the legacy of Humboldt.